So Andrew is a pilot for the New Zealand Air Force. He's actually just got back from a flight fairly recently, and he's going to give us some of his valuable time before he's on his next flight. Andrew's been instrumental, I suppose the mastermind is the right word, for this fantastic new app called Flight Advisor. So he's going to be talking us through this today. So over to you, Andrew. Thank you.
Hi, look, can everyone hear me okay where they are?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Fantastic. Hey, look, thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to come and join you today. We're excited to engage with you guys because, believe it or not, we see more drones seemingly by the week in our operations. And by way of background for the Defence Force, the Civil Aviation Act, typically for what we call general aviation, will not allow you to fly below 500 feet unless you're sort of taking off on landing. There are a whole bunch of exceptions to that. There's whole industries that will operate below there, particularly the agricultural helicopter industry or even fixed-wing spraying. The Defence Force, we get to operate under a slightly different sort of set of rules, which is our Defence Act. And what that means is by being a good custodian, where we can, we will apply the civil aviation rules and adhere to them as best we can. But that doesn't absolve us from being able to do a few other things. And in our case, particularly, we're allowed to fly low-level helicopters down to 0 feet if we want to. But typically, down around 200, 250 feet, we'll be operating routinely. And what makes us a bit different to the agricultural guys that you might be familiar with is that we roam the country on any given day. Agricultural guys will typically fly out at what we call medium levels, so a couple of thousand feet, get to the area they're going to work, and they'll stay there until the job's done. Us, on the other hand, we will fly. I might take off out of Whenuapai, and I might fly down this North Island and back again in a flight, and I might do all of that at 250 feet, and I'll cross hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles of terrain. So that means that we have tremendous exposure to operations of your ilk right around the country, and not just conflicting with drones, but conflicting with other aircraft. And what we really needed was something to address that. And so we've built a system called Flight Advisor. It's sort of my idea, and I've used the Air Force to sort of get it up and running. And essentially, we treat drone operations just like we treat any other operation. You are an aircraft, you just don't have a person on board. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the dynamics of what happens when drones hit wings and things like that, but bird strikes, which are quite common, they have, believe it or not, they're soft and squishy, and so they have a bit of a crumple zone when they hit the wings and things like that. And they do damage, but not as much as what a drone would. With the rotational velocity of the rotor blades, they can pierce open the skin kind of like of a wing, kind of like a tin can opener. And at that point, when we expose what we call our leading edge of our wing to airflow, or in this case, it could be the rest of the drone, then it's got the potential. Some of these drones, 40 kilos plus, they'll take their whole wing off, and then it's good night. So without too much further ado, what I want to do is just now screen share with you the system that I've built, and invite all of you to get involved. We're really pushing this out nationally, and the Air Force are anchoring this, and we're committed to it. So I'll bring that up for you now. So Robin, if I get you to just tell me, is this look about right to you?
Yep, that's coming through really well, thanks.
Cool. All right. So what we're looking at here is essentially it kind of reminds you of Google Maps, I suppose, for New Zealand. But the tricky thing about this is that you've got a whole bunch of different layers, and as you zoom in, the information will start to bloom out at you. And at the moment, it's pretty basic. But what you can do is in the top left-hand corner of the screen, I'm going to click the 3-line button, a little menu will pop out. From there, you can get access to where all the aerodromes are, and there they are populating across the country. And as you zoom in, you'll see more and more aerodromes coming up in different colours between certified and non-certified. That just gives you a bit of geographical reference to where you are in relation to potential aerodrome activity. Likewise, you've got airstrips. These are all the airstrips, agricultural and the like, that are known by Land Information New Zealand. And when you zoom in, you can start to see these airstrips pop out. And they're these little grey and green bits that pop out as you zoom in. Thousands of them across the country, which is probably useful for you guys to know, especially if you want to deconflict with agricultural operators. Moving down the list, we've got airspace. We have stripped this down so that it's only low-level airspace, so effectively any airspace that touches the ground that we need to be aware of. These big red boxes that you can see up around the Bay of Plenty there, those are military areas because it's a military product. Those are areas where I'll go out and play in my P3 Orion, which I used to fly, or down here off the coast of Hākia in the Manawatu, which have a lot of aircraft playing out there. Otherwise, it's restricted areas, so you'll find a lot of them down the west coast of the South Island. A lot of those are danger areas to do with blasting and the like around the mines. Anything that could affect you and your operation that could get you into trouble if you put a drone up in there. Moving on, we've got NOTAMs. Now, NOTAMs, you guys may be familiar with. This is a notices to airmen. This is what we would traditionally use to communicate with each other. So you can see up here, in between Rotorua and Hamilton, there's this orange mark here for surface to 1,700 feet. And it's got a little sort of, looks like a drone symbol or a quadcopter. I can click on that and it says that there's going to be remotely piloted activity taking place. And this location's surface to 1,700 feet. So what we've done is we've taken the actual network from, we call it the AFTN network, International NOTAM Network, and we're displaying this graphically. And you can see these NOTAMs pop out all over the country. So that means for you as a drone operator, if you're putting a NOTAM in there, you can have a bit more confidence that if others are using this product, they can see graphically where you're talking about, versus what we've had before this, which was just a list of text, which when you're trying to, as a pilot, plot out these lat longs, if I'm going to fly the length of the North Island or the South Island, that's a lot of lat longs I have to plot, and it becomes very cumbersome and it's prone to error. So that gives you an idea about that sort of stuff. The next thing you've got here is what we call visual reporting points, or ICAO waypoints. The ICAO waypoints probably don't mean a lot to you guys. These are waypoints that we use to fly around the sky. They're more for people like me to look at. But the visual reporting points are probably quite important, because if I zoom in down around to Hākia, which is my neck of the woods, you can see these little blue text comes up. And there's one there for Halcombe and Martin with a little symbol. And at the end of that little line is where it's actually referencing. Those visual reporting points are important to pilots because they are easy to see from the air. And so if you were to put a note out and say, I'm going to be operating 5 miles or 500 meters north of Halcombe, then all of a sudden I know exactly what you're talking about. And some of those visual reporting points can be in the randomness of places all over New Zealand. So that just helps you if you're trying to get your bearings on when you're notifying. And then lastly, we've got the hazards. Now, we deem hazards as any other aircraft that might be conflicting with our operation, be it manned or unmanned. And so what we've done at the moment is we know that most people tend to use airshare. Airshare is, there's no legal requirement outside of sort of controlled zones or within 4 kilometres of airports to use any product to notify what you're doing if you're going to be below 400 feet. However, most people have been encouraged to use airshare because there's been nothing else out there. The problem we have with airshare is that no manned operator looks at it because it's not relevant to us. It doesn't tell us anything. Airshare, it seems, is quite good at helping air traffic control deconflict their drone operations with aerodromes, and it may be useful for drone operators to see where other drone operators are operating. But it's completely insular to what's going on in the manned sector, and that's where we see Flight Advisor bridging that gap. With this, you'll be able to see both where drones are operating and where manned aircraft are operating. So to that end, what we've done is we've seen this this mark here saying RPAS flights. If I turn that on, now all of a sudden you can see a whole bunch of these red symbols pop up, and it looks like northeast of Taupo here, we've got a whole bunch of drone operations, and this is being imported directly from airshare. And so you can see here somebody's operating surface to 400 feet. That's useful for us in aviation because if I was going to go fly low level, I might look up in that area and think, geez, I'm not going to go up there today because that's just asking for trouble, and I'll just go around you. And that's probably useful for you guys because then you don't have aircraft coming and bothering you and getting in your way. The other thing we have is flight advisories, and this is where this is Flight Advisor's way of you notifying what's going on. Down the bottom here where it says now, I can scroll forward in time and see what's happening around And you can start to see things start to dance around the map as we move along. And this is really to allow you to go forward 24 hours in time. You can see these NOTAMs are time sensitive. There's one down here in Woodburn saying they're VOR DME. It's a beacon at the airfield that we use for navigation. It's going to be there, it's not. Likewise, there's a drone operation, looks like it's close to Picton. If I scroll forward and back in time, there it is there. So it really now gives you the ability to start seeing what's going on right around New Zealand in real time. Don't mind me as my fat fingers move around my iPhone. I'll turn the NOTAMs off because they can get in the way sometimes. So what that is useful for is pulling in the airshare data. What we find increasingly, though, is that we've got just over 60% now of the Part 102 certified drone operators, so the guys trying to do beyond visual line of sight, are now using Flight Advisor instead because they find it a much more user-friendly product. And to give an example of that, I've shown you what we call our basic map, our stripped-down map. As you zoom in, you might have seen a few extra things pop out. If I go down to the ranges next to Palmerston North here, you'll start to see all of the windmills pop out. There's kite symbols or for paper plane symbols for gliding activity, or sorry, I should say kite surfing activity, that sort of stuff. And all of these, as you zoom in, start to appear in different locations. The company that we've got to build this is called Aeropath, and they are the ones responsible for the entirety of New Zealand producing aeronautical information. So all of the information in here is geo-referenced and correct. Which is another sort of useful feature. It's not a third party that we've got to build it. We went right to the source and said, you guys build all of the charts. We want you to build this. To that end, if I go to the top right of the screen, I've got different map layers. You've got your satellite map layer where you can zoom in just like Google Maps and see what's going on. Maybe you've got, you know, the edge of a farm or a hedge or something you're trying to figure out where you're operating. Beyond that, we've got the visual navigation chart, which is what we use for low-level sort of navigation generally in New Zealand. These are kept up to date, and as you zoom in, the information blooms out at you. All of this is freely available within the app. And lastly, we've got the topographical maps. This is useful for us, for our helicopter pilots, but from what I understand, it's also useful for drone operators that are trying to operate and figure out exactly where they are. If I zoom in on Mount Ruapehu, all of a sudden, the information blooms in, and you get up-to-date sort of data. I can then slant that if I want, and if my internet will bear with me, I can then turn that into a three-dimensional shape once it loads. And so now you've got a three-dimensional map, and you can see exactly where you are and mark out what you're doing. Likewise, when I was talking about these visual reporting points, you might have an area that you want to reference, but you don't know exactly where you are in location reference to it. This little symbol here looks kind of like a comb below the 2D. That's actually a ruler. And so I can click on that and I can say, well, there's Whakapapa ski field. And I click on that and I click over here and I get a bearing and a distance. 0.44 nautical miles on 145 degrees true, but I can also do that in kilometers or meters. And you can use that to reference where you're going to be operating. Useful information for me, because if you're referencing Whakapapa ski field, I'm looking at my window, you tell me you're going to be 2 kilometers to the east of it, then I know exactly where to track my eyes to see where your potential operation could be, or more likely in my manned airplane, where I just don't want to go flying. Other things that are useful in here are the ability to report hazards. Probably not such a big deal for the drone operators, but for us it's a big deal. Wires, we just can't see them. And this wire here, 2208, it wasn't marked on any map, and about 3 months ago it came very close to bringing down one of our NH90 helicopters and killing everybody in the crew. You have the ability now, if you have any of these hazards, to drop a pin anywhere on the map and just say, hey, I found this here. And that goes straight to Aeropath, who on behalf of the CAA begin calling around all the lines companies and validating it. That one is probably more tailored to the manned operators, but at the same time, it gives you guys the ability to report anything dangerous that you think might be worth notifying if you're out around the traps. Certainly, if you're at somebody's farm and you can see any wires on there that you think could be a hazard and you don't see them on any of these maps like the VNC and the like, then just mark it. And that's gold dust for us. So I guess the key thing here is right now we don't have any, it doesn't look like we've got any aircraft. Oh, here we go. There's one coming out of Whenuapai. This is what we call a flight advisory. That purple line is a route that an aircraft is planning to fly. If I click on it, it tells me that it's a sea sprite. and it's going to be departing at 2:45 today, so in half an hour's time, and it should be back at about 4:15. And that's the area that it's planning to fly. So if you're going to go fly a drone, like this little guy down in here, then at Waimaku, you might want to know that if you're that drone operator, that there might be a sea sprite moving across. If I look at it again, they said they're going to be anywhere between 250 feet to 1,500 feet AMSL, so above mean sea level, and doing 90 knots or 90 miles an hour. So that is what is an example of an advisory for a fixed wing operator. If you are a drone operator, and we have a few of these guys, the guys in Taranaki are quite good at this, they'll come up and say, hey, I'm a drone operator and I'm going to be in this location today. Make it as big or as small as you want, and you just fill out these details. And really all it is how long you're going to be there. Speed for a drone operator is probably not a massive deal unless you're going to do beyond line of sight and cross-country sort of stuff. Altitudes, aircraft model, call sign, and the ability to put any remarks in there. And what's useful is maybe a phone number and a name, because when that pops up in that area, I won't put it in because it might make people think that it's actually there now. I come in as a pilot and I can see immediately there's some drone operations going on there. And if there's a number, then if I want to go there, it's uncontrolled airspace, there's nothing saying I can't, then I know who to call. And I can say, hey, just so you know, I'm bringing 4 helicopters and we're going to be roaming around that area. Maybe we could sort out some deconfliction. Or, hey, what's your operation? If it's just one drone, we'll go over the top. If you tell me you've got a swarm of drones, then, hey, maybe we'll give it a miss and go somewhere else altogether. It's all about giving people the ability to connect with each other, and you can do it operator to operator. Whenever you put one of these advisories in, you're speaking directly to the pilot, or every pilot in the country potentially. And vice versa, if I put one in, I'm speaking to all of the drone operators that are using the system. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. The one other thing I'd like to show you, and I think this might be where it becomes really useful to you, is you have the ability to set up a notification area. So if I go to user settings down here, you can decide to be notified by email or by text. And so if I turn around and say, hey, look, I'm operating in East Cape today, and I'm only really operating in this sort of area. Now, maybe that's a big area for a drone operator. You can make it as big or as small as you like. What you've done there is you've said, don't notify me unless somebody puts an advisory in that area. And you can be notified by email or text. So you could put your drone operation up there, and if I decide to fly up there and conflict with you and overlap where your position is, you can immediately get a text message that says, hey, Hercules 02 is coming through today, late morning. You know, it won't tell you exactly what time because we're never on time and we never fly the line. And that's why you fly, if you see this, this line up here, it's quite fat. That's because we allow at the moment 2.5 miles either side of our planned track, because we'll go around things, over things, all sorts of stuff. But it gives you the ability, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, if you've got cell phone reception, or maybe you've just got a satellite phone, you can get a heads up that, hey, something's coming. Now, if you get a message that says there's going to be a helicopter exercise, you know, that's going to take place from 10 o'clock onwards, maybe you want to reach out to us and say, hey, boys, we got here first, maybe we need to chat. But at least now you're forewarned as forearmed. And Vicky Verka, I'm now aware that drone operations are taking place. The key point to note about that is if you are using AirShare to notify your flights, whilst we can pull up your AirShare and see that you're there, we won't be able to generate a confliction that will notify you. So if you had an AirShare notification in here and we said, okay, that's cool, we're going to come through with a fleet of Hercules, you won't get that text message function to happen, or email. It will only work if you put in an advisory like I showed you before. So using this sort of function or whatever. You also have the ability to draw a polygon, so you can make it any shape you want if it's a farm or whatever you like. A couple of features that are coming, people often ask us, well, how do I know if I'm within 4 kilometres of an aerodrome? Right now, the civil aviation rules are pretty vague on that, so they don't actually say where that 4 kilometres is measured from. What we're doing at the moment is building in into the background of about 4 or 5 kilometres from an aerodrome. If you try to put an advisory in, it'll give you a pop-up or just say, hey, you might be getting close to that limit. Perhaps you should use AirShare, because that's really the line. AirShare is what you use to communicate with control towers and air traffic control, which is bespoke to aerodromes. Outside of that, flight advisor. The other thing we're looking to add in at the moment is the ability to upload a KML file. So a few drone operators I've spoken with find that they get jobs They don't actually geographically know specifically where it is in the country, but the ability to upload those coordinates onto this and populate that, and then just put their details in about how high and how long and things is what they're doing. So we're going to build that in for the drone operators as well. And that is pretty much it. We've got, just over 60% of the 102 operators. All of the Part 101 training providers in New Zealand now are pushing this. So next time you do your recertification for your drone stuff, you should find them start to talk about Flight Advisor. We are integrating in the new year with the agricultural companies, so Ravensdown, Super Air and the like, so that we can see where they're going to be operating. They use a system called TrackMap for aerial spraying. We're going to integrate with those. And then there are companies like AVCRM that have their own software for drones. We're building an API which we're releasing before Christmas, so that eventually you'll just be able to use those systems and it will integrate with Flight Advisor. So you won't have to come to Flight Advisor and use it as a separate thing. It will just be in the background, and whatever system you're using will be tapping into it, and vice versa. Flight Advisor will be pumping that information back out to your software platform. So that's pretty much all I have to show for now. I want to leave some time for questions because I'm sure there's probably a few. And essentially, Robin can give you the address, but we encourage all and sundry to just come and sign up. It's free. All you have to do is send through a copy of your either your operator certification, or if you've got a part certification for your organisation, and then you're up and running.
Cool. Thank you very much, Andrew. That was awesome. That's progressed heaps since the last time I used it, actually. So it's good to see how it's continuing to grow. So do we have any? Well, first of all, Andrew, are you still online? You might have got cut off. Ah, he's back.
Sorry about that, guys. I just cut out.
No problem. So do we have any questions for Andrew? Sebastian.
Thanks. I might have missed this. The AirShares and the Flight Advisor apps, are they synchronized, or is only when I enter my flights in AirShares, is this synchronized with Flight Advisor? And is when I just entered in Flight Advisor, is this synchronized in AirShares as well?
No, so AirShare does not link with Flight Advisor at the moment, and so we are pulling a feed from AirShare. It's the first time it's been displayed, and so you will be able to, within Flight Advisor, see AirShare, but in AirShare you will not be able to see Flight Advisor. So Flight Advisor is the only place where you'll be able to see what manned operators are up to, at the same time as being able to see what unmanned operators are up to. And only if you use Flight Advisor will you have the ability to receive notifications.
Any other questions? David.
Because I want a T-shirt, but just want to recommend Flight Advisor. Our team's been using it throughout the last few months in deconfliction on multiple occasions with manned aircraft. So yeah, just a thumbs up. Really.
Yeah, I guess if I could, probably just curious about, are there any concerns or points that operators have seen from the manned aviation sector? So when you're out there doing a job, have you noticed the low-level flying aircraft interrupting your operations, that sort of stuff? Is it something that's a big concern for you? Or is it just one of 100 things you're worried about out there on the forestry site?
Definitely a concern, and we've seen you fly past quite a number of times. So, yeah, no, it's fantastic having that heads up. Yeah,
cool. Well, and I guess where we sort of see it is, it's a challenge. What I've discovered talking to these operators is that your typical Part 102 operator, they're not really aviation minded, and that's not because they're not smart or intelligent or anything like that. It's just simply that they're using drones to supplement their core business, and in your case, I guess your core business is forestry. If I'm dealing with Fulton Hogan, their core core business is sort of raw infrastructure, or geotechnical engineers, it's about building dams. And so for me to sit there and spout forth civil aviation law, it just goes over their head, and so it should. It'd be the same as them trying to explain how to geotechnically build a dam. But where we sort of see the common language across all of us is the Safety and Health Act. And where we see Flight Advisor from our perspective fitting in with the way you guys operate is, at the end of the day, aviation is not a zero risk game. There is always a chance that something's going to happen, and just because you use Flight Advisor doesn't mean that you're free of all risk. But what it does do is give you the best chance of avoiding it, and that's what aviation is all about for us, is just putting layers in there. And I guess in a compliance sort of hat on, in a bit of a selfish way, if there is an accident, you're going to be investigated by a bunch of people you've probably never heard of. And one of the things they're going to ask you is, show me, so far as reasonably practical under the Health and Safety Act, how you mitigated this collision risk so far as reasonably practical. And where we see Flight Advisor is meeting that so far as reasonably practical thing. It's not going to stop an accident, but it sure as hell might prevent a few. And if the worst does happen, then at least you can say, well, I was doing everything I could. And that's probably the common language we see for you guys. We see it being a key part of your overall safety management system.
So a couple of questions from me, Andrew. One of them, you mentioned about sort of conflicts with manned aircraft. We've had a few in certain areas of New Zealand with just people out for a jolly, and enjoying a bit of a fly around a scenic area. And one of the things that we found quite important for us was actually getting in touch with the local aero clubs, because
Yes.
They just seem to operate on a different frequency. So that was quite important for us. Have you had much buy-in from them, or have you approached them?
Yeah, we have. So we have approached them. AOPA, can't remember what, Air Operators Pilots Association, I think it's called. So basically, general aviation is probably what you're talking about. People just going out on a nice day and having a bit of fun. They are now signed up, advertising it publicly on their website, just like you guys are. And we've had probably about 100 around the country now sign up individually, pilots. The training schools are now starting to come on board, and the CAA are now swinging into this. We should start seeing some promotional stuff come out from them, I'm told, just before Christmas around Flight Advisor, and encouraging people to use it. UAV New Zealand, so Isaac, that you just met before, they've just come out in the last 2 weeks and said they publicly endorse this product now, and so they're Flight Advisor, so they're pushing it. And we haven't come out all singing, all dancing from the Air Force, because it has just been me, and I've been doing this in my spare time. But the other reason for that too is that whilst we were finding our feet with it and trying to learn about the different industries and the different dynamics out there, we just wanted to do it softly. So if there was anything wrong, we could kind of fix it without it being a big deal. And that's where Scion and Interpine have been great, because they were giving us that feedback in the early days just to make it useful for what you guys need. Because if it's not useful, no one's going to use it. And what we've found overwhelmingly from the 102 operators is they are now moving across to Flight Advisor in a big way, because they find AirShare, to be blunt, useless.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know from our perspective, we have actually probably dropped about 3 apps out of our flight planning routine, because we can just do it all in Flight Advisor now. So that's been really useful. One observation I'd say as well. So you talked about your daily advisories that you can set up. Are you able to put in something like a KML or a shapefile? So, for example, a forestry company could put in their estate boundary and then get a daily update on what operations might be occurring within their boundaries.
Anything's possible. I hadn't thought about it, and this is why I love reaching out to you guys, because if I can make it useful for you, I will. We haven't got to the point of uploading, of building the code to upload the KMLs yet, but there's no reason why we couldn't do something like that, and look into see if that's feasible. So it would be the ability then for you to upload where you're planning to operate, but also instead of having to draw your area of where you want to be notified, you're saying you'd like to be able to just upload a KML file of that area.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Timberlands, as an example, has got a fairly established boundary for their estate, so they could just pump that in, and then every morning all of their pilots get an email saying this is what's going on in the estate today. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. No, I'll see what we can do. Again, thanks for the feedback. That's what we're trying to do.
So, any other questions? Is it on Apple? Yes, it is.
Yeah, so on that, it's not an app. It looks and feels like an app, but it's actually a website. And we did that on purpose because otherwise you have to update your apps every time the iOS updates. So what that means is you can access it on your computer, you can access it on your Android, your iPhone, whatever you like. What I'd suggest is if you're using an iPhone or an Android, you can save it as a bookmark, on your home screen. And if you do that, then it will come up with a little icon that will look and feel like an app, but it's just taking you to a website. Caveat would be that it works best with smartphones and tablets, and that's just because they've got the latest graphics chips in them. If you go and whack it into your 5-year-old computer, you might find it runs a bit slow.
Awesome. Well, if there's no more questions, let's put our hands together for Andrew. Oh. Sorry, we do actually have one more question. Ant-Man.
Sure.
Hey, Andrew, that's great. Thanks for that. I was just wondering, like, if a company is already using the systems along with Flight Advisory, is there like an application programming interface that they can use to integrate their technology with Flight Advisory?
Yes, there is. So we've built the API as of I think Friday, and we're at the moment just building the documentation for that API, and that's where I was alluding to where AV CRM, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with them, a drone sort of software orientated company. They want to be the launch customer. I think they're doing a lot of work with fire and emergency in New Zealand. So we're looking to partner with them, and also TrackMap, which is all the manned agricultural activities. We're going to see if we can get those guys on board. And so exactly what you're talking about, eventually you will use your software that you're familiar with, and you'll be able to maybe create an advisory in there. And then that pumps it out to stuff that I can see, and vice versa. If Flight Advisor is getting advisories coming in, then it will be able to pump that stuff forward to your software.
No t-shirt for you, Ant-Man. You already have one. Cool. No, thanks a lot, Andrew. Thank you for your valuable time, and yeah, we'll look forward to continuing the collaboration. So
yeah, no trouble at all. And thank you for giving me your time. I love the feedback. It's what makes it better.
Awesome. Cheers. So